Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Ask the Experts, the Quality Payment Program. My name is Alan Hess. I'm the VP of Marketing here at iHealth, and I will serve as your moderator for today's presentation. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. Everyone on the call is in listen-only mode using your computer speaker system by default. If you prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane on the right-hand side of your screen, and the dial-in information will be displayed. You'll have the opportunity during this session to submit questions during today's presentation by typing your questions into the questions pane on the control panel. If you send in your questions at any time during the presentation, we will collect these and, time permitting, address them during the Q&A portion of today's session. Also, please note, the slides will be shared in a follow-up email after this presentation in case you want to review again or share with peers. I'd like to now introduce our panelists. First is Alex Goulding, Public Policy Manager here at iHealth. Prior to joining iHealth, she served as the program manager for an electronic health record company and is a subject matter expert on healthcare regulations and legislation. She was a member of the HIMSS Electronic Health Record Association and various groups such as Delivery System Reform, Public Policy, Meaningful Use, and Interoperability. Alex also serves as a liaison for key contacts on the Hill, including CMS and members of Congress and Senate. We also have Justin Barnes joining us on today's webinar. Justin is a corporate, board, and public policy advisor. In addition, he is Chairman Emeritus of the HIMSS EHR Association, co-chair of the Accountable Care Community of Practice, and partner at iHealth, where he assists organizations with industry strategy and leadership. Justin's also the host of the weekly syndicated radio show, This Just In, on Healthcare Radio and Business Radio X. Justin has formally addressed or testified before Congress as well as the last two presidential administrations on more than 20 occasions. He's appeared in more than 1,200 journals, magazines, and broadcast outlets. With that, let me turn the presentation over to Alex. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Let's go ahead and get started. Today's agenda, we have a macro overview, timeline. I'll spend most of the time on MIPS today, and then we'll end with some resources. The first thing I wanted to kick these slides off with is this macro breakdown. There are a lot of acronyms floating around, especially with this program, and I know there's some confusion around the macro hierarchy, so to speak, so I wanted to just lay out what's what. The law itself is the Medicare Access and Chip Reauthorization Act of 2015, also known as MACRA. In a nutshell, the main premise behind MACRA is that it repealed the sustainable growth rate. So MACRA repealed this SGR and essentially replaced it with a new program called the Quality Payment Program, or the QPP. So now we see under MACRA this shift from a quantity-based reimbursement, the SGR, to a quality-based reimbursement, the QPP. Within the Quality Payment Program, CMS has offered flexibility and given clinicians the choice to essentially be reimbursed through one of two pathways. The first pathway is the Merit-Based Incentive Payment System, also known as MIPS. MIPS is where the majority of clinicians will fall, so again, we'll spend some extra time on MIPS today. And the other payment path is known as Advanced APMs, or Advanced Alternative Payment Models. As I've mentioned several times now, majority of clinicians will fall into the MIPS path, so we aren't going to spend a ton of time on advanced APMs, but I did want to make sure each of you had access to this slide. CMS is expected to update this list of advanced APMs annually, so the ones that you see here are exclusive to the 2017 performance period. And the reason these are a little hard to read, or rather the color isn't as easy to read, is because I've linked each of these advanced APMs to their corresponding website. So if you are interested in pursuing an advanced alternative payment model, you'll have quick access to that site and be able to have at least a basis of understanding as to what that APM does, how it's measured, and so on. Moving on to the meat of today's conversation in the MIPS pathway. This is the alternative path to advanced APMs. One's not necessarily better than the other. However, CMS ultimately wants clinicians to participate in an alternative payment model if applicable. But for now, we'll see more in the MIPS path. So again, we are going to spend some extra time here diving into those different levels. But at a high level, the two components that make up MIPS are alignment with past CMS programs to help make the transition as painless as possible, and then flexibility. So you can see here, CMS has actually streamlined pre-existing CMS programs and moved them under MIPS and renamed them as performance categories, which we'll go over again in a couple of slides here. All right, before we go too deep into the MIPS weeds, I did want to touch on the timeline. I've only added the 2017 performance timeline because I suspect CMS will offer some flexibility for next year's reporting timeline. So to try and prevent some confusion, I stuck with what's in front of us now. You can see here 2017 is the first performance period. Clinicians will need to submit their 2017 performance period data no later than March 31st, 2018. CMS will assess their 2017 data in 2018, and then finally in 2019, clinicians will see their payment adjustment from their 2017 performance period. So much like previous CMS programs, there is a 2-year delay between the performance period and payment period. I also want to note that this performance period, or the 2017 performance period, began on January 1st and lasts through December 31st. And eligible clinicians can start any time between now and October 2nd. Okay, on to MIPS. So you just heard me mention the term eligible clinicians on the timeline slide. Eligible clinicians, or ECs, are all listed for your convenience on this slide. I'm not going to read through each of these, but I did want to highlight who is not eligible. The clinicians that are in their first year of Medicare Part B participation, this is mostly fresh out of med school, are exempt, and clinicians who bill equal to or less than $30,000 in Medicare annually or care for 100 or less Medicare patients annually are also exempt. And as I've mentioned, clinicians will choose which payment pathway they want to participate in under the QPP. So if they are participating in the Advanced Alternative Payment Model pathway, they are also exempt from MIPS. All right, let's dive into the 3 performance categories that make up MIPS. Clinicians participating in MIPS will be scored on a scale of 0 to 100 based on their performance in these 3 weighted categories. You'll likely see an expansion of performance categories next year, but for the 2017 performance period, what you see here is how clinicians will be scored. I'll stress that CMS is really allotted for flexibility here, so the all or nothing approach has been removed from MIPS. Now, I'll give you all a forewarning that the next few slides offer a breakdown of each of the 3 performance categories, so they are a bit text heavy. However, I'm not going to read through each bullet, but the main idea here was to make the information available to you in case you do have questions on one of these specific performance categories. So let's start with quality. The quality performance category replaces the Physician Quality Reporting System, or PQRS. ECs will have 271 measures to select from, including 30 specialty-specific measure sets. The next slide has a full list of the 30 different specialty-specific measure sets that are offered. But again, the idea here is that CMS has increased flexibility by targeting more measures for specialties. Their goal in this is to make it as neutral as possible among specialties participating, so that one specialty doesn't necessarily have the advantage in terms of measures to select from. To receive maximum credit, so that 60% piece of the pie we just saw, ECs will need to report on up to 6 measures, and 1 must be an outcome measure. And you'll actually know if a measure is an outcome measure because CMS has blatantly labeled them. So when you're looking at all the different options, it's laid out in front of you for you to see there. Also worth noting, there's some special reporting flexibility for groups that are participating in APMs but are not in the advanced APM pathway. So really quickly, I want to go back for a moment to show you all what I mean by removing all or nothing. Okay, I just told you that ECs will need to report 6 quality measures to receive the maximum credit under quality. As part of this increased flexibility, let's say an EC only needs 3 of the 6 quality measures. Instead of receiving a 0 because they did not complete all 6, they would likely receive half credit or 30%. So they'll still have the opportunity to receive a positive payment adjustment because they're not receiving a flat 0% under this performance category. So again, there is more flexibility under MIPS than there was with the previous programs. As promised, here is the list of the 30 specialty-specific measure options. Again, I'm not going to read through these, but I do want to make sure you're all aware of the different specialty-specific measure sets that are offered under quality. Next up is the Improvement Activities, or IA, performance category. Unlike the Quality Performance category and the Advancing Care Information performance category, this one does not replace a pre-existing CMS program. There are 92 measure options, and ECs will need to report up to 4 to receive maximum credit here. The activities are weighted as either high or medium, so for flexibility, CMS is allowing clinicians to select any combination of high and medium weighted activities to achieve full credit. The high weighted activities are worth double of what the medium ones are worth. So ECs are able to select either 2 high weighted or 2 medium and 1 high weighted or 4 medium weighted activities. So that's where that up to 4 language comes from. Much like quality, CMS has offered some special reporting options for those that are not in the advanced APM path, but are participating in APMs, as well as special reporting for smaller practices in rural health shortage areas. For example, the one that I want to point out here is for folks in a certified PCMH or patient-centered medical home, they'll automatically receive full credit under improvement activities. And if you're in an alternative payment model that's not a certified PCMH, you can still receive half credit up to full credit pending the APM automatically under this category. And those with 15 or fewer participants, or those in a rural or health shortage area, are only required to report up to 2 measures as opposed to 4 to receive full credit. The final MIPS performance category for 2017 is Advancing Care Information, or ACI. ACI replaces Medicare Meaningful Use, and unlike the other categories, this one actually has somewhat of an all-or-nothing approach. And what I mean by that is, in order to receive any credit at all under ACI, clinicians must report at a minimum the respective base measures. So for clinicians that are using 2014 cert, they have 4 base measures they need to report on, otherwise they'll receive a 0 for ACI. And those using 2015 cert have 5 base measures they'll need to report on, or they'll also receive a 0 for ACI. Now, depending on the cert, clinicians can report up to 11 or 15 measures to receive that maximum credit under ACI. But again, at a minimum, they must report for those base measures. I made this slide to serve really as your cheat sheet. I've given each MIPS performance category a brief description, plus the reporting requirements, and the overall percentage that category plays in the MIPS performance score. So this is everything I just went through in a convenient little chart. I know this is a lot of information to take in, but hopefully most of you are familiar enough with macro that this wasn't a complete information dump, but I do want to make sure we briefly go over the payment adjustment. If you recall from the timeline, 2019 is the first payment year and is tied directly to the 2017 performance period. So the payment adjustment tied to this performance period is 4%. You see that it gradually increases year over year until 2022, where it plateaus at 9%. So what that means is from 2022 onward, the payment adjustment percentage is 9%. It's not expected to increase or decrease from there. Also, an important note, this is a sliding scale. So let's think back to that quality example I gave you, where you have a practice that only completes 3 of the 6 measures, and therefore they don't receive full credit under quality. However, they would still receive some credit, which can keep them from avoiding that negative adjustment. So in that example, they may receive a 1 or 2 or 3% positive payment adjustment versus the full 4%. And the last MIPS slide I wanted to share with you all is this pick your pace option in 2017. Per usual, since CMS has implemented a new program, they are allowing greater flexibility with reporting options this year. If a clinician is eligible and opts not to participate, they will receive the full negative 4% payment adjustment in 2019. CMS is also allowing a test option, which only requires ECs to submit either 1 quality measure or 1 improvement activity, or the base measures under ACI to avoid a negative payment adjustment. So essentially, you would just get a neutral payment adjustment there if you do the bare minimum. This likely won't be the case moving forward, but CMS is using this year as a trial and error period, so they are allowing that test option to alleviate some of the burden on clinicians, specifically those who have not previously participated in PQRS or MU. So the transition is a little bit tougher on them than clinicians that were already participating in those programs. The next PACE option is called partial, and is the one that I recommend clinicians attempt. This is an option where ECs submit all data they were able to report towards for 90 days up to 364 days. So really anything more than just the minimum. This allows clinicians to receive a small positive payment adjustment versus just that neutral payment adjustment under the test option. And the last option is full. So that means that you started on January 1 and you're planning to submit 365 days worth of data. Okay, last bit of slides here. I've provided you all with some additional resources. The first 2 I want to point out are iHealth resources. We have a great ebook as well as an FAQ posted on our site. We also have specialty-specific info briefs for cardiology, radiology, ortho, and primary care. These are really high level, but they do break down what's applicable to that specific scope of practice. I also want to share the CMS QPP website. This is especially helpful when you are wanting to view your specialty-specific options. And then an acronym cheat sheet. And we will go ahead and move on to the Q&A portion of today's webinar.
Thank you, Alex. That was great. All right, we've got a bunch of questions that are coming in, so let me start to read off a couple of these here in random order. First, could a physician participate in MIPS and APM at the same time?
Yes, in fact, they can receive partial credit under that improvement activities category just for participating in an APM.
Okay, great. This is a long question I'm going to read off here. If a solo practitioner does not meet the criteria of $100,000 per year or over 100 patients, but wants to participate in the program, can they still do it? If so, will they get any incentives if they accomplish the reporting percentages?
CMS is allowing clinicians that aren't necessarily eligible this year to actually participate on a trial period. I'm not sure about the incentives piece there. Maybe Justin has some more insight, but they're using it as more of a data collection so that they can see if it is possible for maybe those that they're not qualifying as eligible right now to participate in future years.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add there is the actual number was inaccurate that was typed in. It's $30,000, not $100,000. So it's, if you have less than $30,000 in Medicare claims, then you would not receive the payment reductions or negative payment adjustments. So it's 30,000, not 100,000 is typed in there. So I just want to make sure we clarify there. I don't know if there's clarification from CMS quite yet if you can receive incentive money, but I would seriously recommend it because the odds are you're going to participate in a program. This is just year one. I think you touched on it a little bit, Alex. This is just for year one, the threshold, the bottom threshold. But this is going to be for all Medicare providers moving forward, probably starting in 2018. If not 2018, then 2019. So this is the direction. So it's better that you start, you get acclimated with the program, you can put some of your best practices in place. So we really recommend that all care providers set up their dashboard, do some of their tracking, and even the test, even submit data, and companies like us can help you do that, just because, A, you will get feedback from CMS. You may get an incentive, depending upon some of the surveillance that they get back from the industry, from some of the smaller practices or the individual clinicians. So I think it's a real opportunity to hone in, create your best practices, and potentially get some money that could be put out there on the table for even the 2017 reporting year. But this is the direction all of CMS is going. You know, I can't say if it's for sure in 2018, but certainly by 2019. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you for that clarification. That was thank you. Another question that came in: Can we participate in the QPP without an EHR?
For now, yes. You can submit data several ways, including using a qualified clinical data registry or QCDR, which does not require an EHR. But I suspect very strongly in future years of the program an EHR will be required.
Yeah, I'll just layer on there a little bit. I would say, yes, technically you can for 2017, but I think you would be hard-pressed in 2018 to have a successful year not using some type of health IT and specifically an EHR, because you're going to want, there's going to be other components around population health, analytics, showing improving outcomes that can really only be tracked via electronic health record. They're going to offer, the reason why there's some confusion here is they offer flexibility in how to report. So you can report through a registry, you can report through claims-based reporting, you can report through directly through the EHR. That's the flexibility. So people can say, well, you don't have to use an EHR. Well, technically, they're offering flexibility that you don't have to submit through an EHR, but for the most part, the program is based off of using an EHR. But I think you can get away with it for 2017, but I don't believe much longer. So hope that helps a little bit more.
Thanks, Justin. And there is a related question to that, so this is a great segue. Will my practice be penalized if we don't have the latest MIPS edition for our EHR?
No. Sorry. Go ahead, Alex. I'll answer first.
You're right. They won't be. As long as they have 2014 certification at a minimum, then they'll still be able to report without issue. And there's also an option in 2017 for those that are in the process of upgrading to the 2015 cert that's called transition measures, specifically under advancing care information, where they can actually use a combination of the measure options that are under 2014 and 2015 cert.
Excellent.
Good, thank you. And this is, I guess, a clarification. I'm not sure if you touched on this between larger and smaller practices, but do smaller practices have to report as many improvement activities as larger practices, and can you clarify?
They don't. For improvement activities, practices that have greater than 15 folks that are participating in MIPS have to do up to 4 measures. However, those with 15 or fewer only have to do up to 2 measures.
Okay, and I think there's a related question here at that. Can you just go, for a small practice, I guess doesn't make a difference, can you go back over the minimum requirements to avoid a negative payment adjustment?
Sure. So that would be the test option for 2017. And what that means is clinicians will either need to submit 1 quality measure or 1 improvement activity, or those 4 or 5 base ACI measures. So just 1 from each category. excuse me, not from each, but one from each category needs to be submitted, but not in conjunction. Does that make sense? So again, one quality or one improvement activity or those base ACI measures.
Thank you. I think that clarifies. And Justin, this may be more of a question for you, but I'll throw this out. This came in. How likely is Dr. Price to roll back some of these programs, especially MACRA? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. I don't believe Dr. Price is going to do anything but support the program. He voted for it. Obviously, this is, as you guys look back at some of the legislation that's gone through Congress, this is probably the most supported piece of regulation in modern time and in legislation. As it's bipartisan, bicameral, House and Senate, Republican and Democrats all pushed this through because it really gave a sturdy and steady payment process for physicians and clinicians. That we didn't have the consistency. We always had the cut, the looming 20 to 30% annual cut with the SGR and growth rate. So this really gave the clarity and the foundation to build the future of healthcare on top of. So, and Tom's fully in support of that. And if you've been on my previous webinars, Tom's been a good friend of mine for almost 20 years now. We're out of Atlanta. He lives in Atlanta. He's our congressional member, actually. But he's in very much support of the program. I think the part that you will see Dr. Price take a good hard look at is to ensure companies are offering the most flexibility. He's going to push on innovation. He's a very smart man. He's a care provider. He's an orthopedic surgeon. And he's going to want to make sure that these programs are not overly burdensome to clinicians, nurses, and doctors. And so he's going to push CMS to ensure that these regulations are as simple as possible. There's clarity out there. There's support for care providers. I don't believe we've had a care provider leading CMS in 20 years. So I think this is a very strong boon for healthcare. And I think that care providers and alike are going to be very pleased with what we see coming out regarding this. Now, I'm not talking about health insurance reform. That's a whole different discussion. But as it relates to MACRA and quality reporting programs and payment structures under these types of programs, I think you're going to see even more support for these programs. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Great. Thank you, Justin. We've got time for a couple more questions. We got a bunch coming in here. Let me get through a couple of them. Alex, can we select any quality outcome measure, or does it have to be specialty specific?
So to receive maximum credit under quality, you need to report one outcome measure. Whether that outcome measure comes from the specialty-specific measures or there's actually a list that isn't, it's just a general list, it isn't specialty-specific, it's up to you in your practice. As long as an outcome measure is completed, then they'll get the credit that they need for that.
Okay, great. And there's a related question to that. Where can I find a full list of measures? I think you gave that. Maybe you can back up and show that URL again.
Sure. The QPP site from CMS, they actually have, if you see in the middle there, Explore Measures tab. If you click on that, it will actually give you a full list of measures, and you can select by specialty or however you want to sort and actually pull it up in an Excel document. So if you did want to save that for later, you have access to that.
Great, thank you. We've got time for one last question. If my practice decides to move forward with the partial recording option, when is the latest we can start?
October 2nd is the last day to start if you choose the partial reporting option.
But yeah, and she's technically right, but I would caution just against that. If anybody knows me and has heard me speak through the years, same thing with meaningful use program, waiting to the last minute and not strategically planning at least a month in advance to maybe start in September or start even earlier, I think is just rolling the dice, because we're talking about a lot of money. It might only be 4% this first year, but it will mean a lot financially and strategically for your practice. So just because also all of this is going to be public on the CMS Physician Compare webpage and website. that details what programs your practice and you as a clinician are participating in, like PQRS, meaningful use, the QPP, all these different quality measures, and more data. Right now it's fairly limited, but starting in 2018 and 2019, we're going to see a lot more information granularly on each care provider that participates in CMS, their quality scores, their ratings, what programs they've been successful with, and so forth. So consumerism is really going to start to take hold. So again, we just don't want any mishaps or anybody not reporting or making a small mistake, because it really could affect the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years of your practice, and certainly the revenue opportunity, never mind the strategic opportunities. So great question, though.
All right, thank you. Well, we've reached the top of the hour, so I want to thank Alex and Justin for answering all the questions today. I also want to thank all the participants that were able to take time out of their day and attend with us the Ask the Experts, the Quality Payment Program session today. Once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive an email survey on the and it'll be a survey on the presentation. I appreciate if you take time to complete that and provide your feedback. As a reminder, today's slides will be shared in a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours, and we'll also include a link to view a recording of the webinar in case you want to review again or share with any of your peers. On behalf of Alex, Justin, and myself and the iHealth Innovations team, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I wish everyone a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.